I want to start with the one that I still don't talk about much, because the more I describe it out loud, the more it sounds like nothing. And that's sort of the problem with it. It was nothing for a long time. That's what made it bad. This was the second autumn I'd been doing solo overnights. I'm not some survivalist. I had a decent tent, a filter, a little stove, and I'd picked a spot off a Forest Service road about 4 hours north of where I lived. There's a trail there that most people do as a day hike, but if you keep going past the lake, the foot traffic basically dies, and that emptiness was the whole point for me. I'd had a hard couple of years, and I liked being somewhere nobody could reach me. I want to be honest about that, because later I kept thinking about how badly I'd wanted to be unreachable, and how I got exactly that. I set up maybe 1.5 miles past the lake, in a flat spot near a creek. Good water sound, the kind of white noise that makes you sleep hard. I remember being pleased with the sight. I ate, I read on my phone until the battery got low. I went to sleep around 10. I woke up because the creek sounded wrong. That's the only way I can put it. You sleep next to running water, and your brain learns the pattern, and somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, the pattern had a gap in it, like something was standing in the water, or near it, breaking the flow. I lay there and told myself it was a deer. Deer come to water. It's the most normal thing in the world. I actually felt a little proud of myself for not panicking, for being the kind of person who hears a noise in the woods and thinks deer instead of bolting upright. The thing is, a deer moves on. This didn't move on. The gap in the creek sound stayed in the same place for what felt like a long time, and I'm not going to pretend I checked a watch, but it was long enough that I stopped feeling proud and started feeling stupid. Because deer don't stand still in cold water at 3 a.m. for 10 minutes. There's no reason to. I didn't unzip the tent. I want to say I bravely looked out, but I didn't. I lay there with my headlamp in my hand, not turned on, because turning it on felt like announcing something. And eventually the creek sound went back to normal, all at once, the way it would if whatever was standing in it just stepped out. In the morning I felt completely fine about it. Daylight does that. I made coffee, and I almost laughed at myself. But I walked down to the creek, just to look, and there were prints in the soft bank. Boot prints. Not hiking boots with that waffle tread, flat-soled, like work boots. And they weren't pointed along the bank the way someone passing through would leave them. They were facing my campsite. 2 of them, side by side, like someone had stood at the edge of the water and looked up the slope at my tent for a while, and then turned around and walked back the way they came. I packed up and left that morning. I told myself a hunter had come to the creek, gotten his bearings and moved on, and that's probably true. That's genuinely probably what happened. But I've never been able to explain why he'd stand still in the water long enough to break the sound of it, and why he'd face my tent, and why, when I followed the prints back toward the trail to see where he'd come from, they stopped. Not faded out, stopped, in dry leaves, like he'd been more careful everywhere, except the one soft place by the water. I drove home with the windows down, because I felt like I needed the air, and I didn't do another solo overnight that year. The second one isn't mine, it's my brother-in-law's, but I was there for the end of it, and I trust him, so I'll tell it the way he told me and add what I saw. He hunts. Has his whole life, very methodical guy, not someone who spooks. He'd been scouting a new area on private timberland he'd gotten permission to use, way back on logging roads, and he'd put up a couple of trail cameras a few weeks before season to see what was moving through. If you don't know, these are little cameras strapped to trees, motion-triggered. They take a photo or short clip when something walks past. You leave them out and come back later and check the cards. So he goes back to pull the cards. Normal stuff on the first camera. Deer, a coyote, a lot of empty triggers from branches moving. The second camera, the one deeper in, had the deer and the usual, and then it had a person. Now, a person isn't crazy. People walk through. But this was at night, and the guy was close to the camera, closer than you'd be if you were just passing. And in the photo, he's looking directly into the lens. These cameras have an infrared flash that most people can't see, but some can, just barely. A faint red glow. And this guy had clearly noticed it, because he's standing maybe 6 feet away, staring right at it. Barefaced, ordinary looking, nothing dramatic, just a man in the dark looking at the camera. My brother-in-law didn't love that, but he figured it was another hunter or someone who'd wandered onto the land. What bothered him was the next part. The timestamps. There were 3 more photos of the same man over the following 2 weeks. Always at night. Always at that one camera. And in each one he was a little closer. The last one, he's right up on the lens, and you can only see part of his face, because he's too close to focus. And in none of the deer photos before or after is the camera moved or knocked. He wasn't disturbing it, he was just visiting it, coming back to the same camera, at night, again and again, and standing in front of it. My brother-in-law's read on it, which I think is the sane read, is that the guy figured out it was a camera, figured out it belonged to whoever had permission on the land, and was basically messing with him. A territory thing. People get weird about hunting spots. That's a real explanation, and I believe it might be the right one. Here's the part I was there for. He decided to pull all his cameras out, because the spot was ruined for him anyway. I went along to help carry gear. Daytime, totally casual, 2 grown men on a clear afternoon. We get to the deep camera and it's gone. Strap cut. Not stolen the way a thief grabs a thing and runs. The strap was cut clean and left looped around the tree, and the camera was set on the ground at the base of the trunk, facing outward, switched off. Placed there, like someone wanted us to find it set down neatly and understand that they'd known we were coming back for it. We didn't say much. We just took it and walked out faster than we'd walked in. Both of us doing that thing where you don't want to admit you're scanning the tree line. He never went back. He says it was probably just a guy. He says that a lot, actually, more than you'd say it if you fully believed it. The last one is shorter, and it's the one that actually changed how I think about being outside. A group of us rented a cabin for a long weekend. 4 of us, an hour or so up a mountain on a gravel road. The kind of place with a hot tub and a fire pit and a guest book full of other people's nice weekends. Completely normal vacation. We weren't roughing it. I mention that because I think people assume these things only happen to people doing something risky, and we were doing the least risky thing in the world. We were drinking beer in a hot tub. The first night, one of my friends said she thought she saw someone at the edge of the trees past the fire pit. We all looked and there was nothing, and we gave her a hard time about it, and that was that. The woods are dark and your eyes invent things. Fair enough. The second day, small stuff. The cushions on the porch furniture were rearranged, but we figured one of us had moved them. A beer bottle we were sure we'd brought inside was out on the railing. The kind of thing where everyone assumes someone else did it, and you don't push, because pushing it makes the weekend weird. I want to be clear that none of this felt scary at the time. It felt like 4 messy people not keeping track of their stuff. What broke it was the firewood. There was a stack of firewood by the side of the cabin, and on the 3rd morning, the guy who'd been handling the fires came in kind of quiet and asked us to come look. Someone had taken wood from the stack and built a little fire ring of their own back in the trees, maybe 40 feet from the cabin, just past where you'd see it from the windows. A real fire ring, with ash in it, cold, used. Someone had been sitting back there, with a fire, using our wood, close enough to watch the cabin, and far enough that we'd never have noticed unless we'd walked right up on it. And the spot it was in had a clear sightline to the hot tub and the back deck where we'd been hanging out, where my friend had said she saw someone the first night. We left that day, packed in about 20 minutes. The rental company was apologetic and said sometimes people use these remote properties when they're empty between bookings, squatters basically, and that it had probably been someone who didn't expect the place to be rented that week and just hadn't moved on. And honestly, that explanation covers almost everything. It covers the cushions and the bottle and the wood. It even covers the figure at the tree line. What it doesn't cover, for me, is the feeling I had on the drive down, which was that I couldn't remember the last time before that weekend when I genuinely believed a place was empty just because I couldn't see anyone in it. I check now. At rest stops, in parking garages, in my own backyard at night. Not in a dramatic way, just a habit I didn't have before, of understanding that not seeing someone and there being no one are two completely different things, and that I had spent my whole life confusing them. That's the part that stayed, not the fire ring. The fact that someone had sat at it, warm, watching us be happy and careless, and we never felt it at all.